Fantastic. Hello, everybody. After that amazing session, which raises the bar very high, I hope that I can entertain you a little further. Very excited to be here. I'm heading an organization called Global Human Pharma Services, and I'm very excited to be able to provide you an update of what I presented a year earlier already at this exact same conference. Back the days, it was about how to build a global digital content factory with the purpose of delivering content at scale. And this is kind of working now, more or less flawlessly. It's deployed worldwide, all markets that Boehringer is operating in. But now we want to become better, right? We want to have custom content at scale. Custom content meaning personalized content that is better engaging with the physicians. And what sounds pretty easy turned out to be really tough. And I want to talk a little bit about this, not celebrating failures too much, but also not celebrating successes that are not there yet. So I will talk a little bit about prerequisites of what is needed to be able to deliver custom content at scale. Let me say one thing up front here. We have put together a couple of templates, a couple of modules, and the outcome of different variations of more or less the same asset is amazing. And it actually works. On a project basis, it works. We have significantly improved engagement KPIs. So this discussion is off the table, more or less. It's worth investing there. And I received already some critical comments about, yeah, that's email and so on. We are exploring other channels also, but email is the most straightforward and probably the easiest to master. But we had pilots on videos that are customized and so on. Engagement is improving, so for us, this is working. And with the global digital content factory that is operating at scale, we have also seen some good progress that we achieved. So about 60% reduction in production timelines, and if you include the creative phase of the process, we have seen up to 80% faster turnaround time. And obviously, when you have your modularized content available, people start using it, so the reusage of existing stuff has gone up to 50%. Before I move on, a few words on who's Boehringer Ingelheim, because maybe not everybody is super familiar. There's one purpose line that we stress a lot, which is transforming lives for generations. Why am I saying this? Because this generation statement, this is at the very heart of this company. It's 100% family-owned still, and the family is actually thinking in generations. So this is not just a lip service, they mean it, which means we are able to follow strategic directions, probably with more persistence than what might be possible in companies that need to report financial performance on a quarterly basis. The buyer people in the room might be a little disappointed now, but since about 4 weeks it's public. We are now the biggest German pharma company. We took over from Bayer. Yay! We are beyond 53,000 people. R&D expenses grew up to almost 6 billion, which is almost 15% more than the year before. So the family is investing heavily. And our net sales reached almost 26 billion euro, which represents growth, which was far ahead of the pharma industry. So a quick recap from last year. That's the organization that I'm heading. It's kind of an internal agency that is providing content management services. We are optimizing operations along 3 measures. One is constant business process re-engineering, because whatever we do at global scale, meaning also minor improvements have quite a significant impact. So this is why this is super important. We are constantly optimizing make versus buy decisions, and we are optimizing delivery locations, always trying to find the best place to deliver specific activities. 3 key pillars here. One is we have one captive center, which is operated out of Barcelona. that we call delivery unit. We have 3 services departments there. One is omnichannel execution. The next one is medical affairs operations support. And the third one is everything around data, data excellence, data governance, and so on. Then we have 2 entities that are operated by an offshore and outsourced partner that we call Digital Factory and Creative Factory. The Digital Factory is actually producing all the digital assets that you typically use to engage with your customers, meaning emails, e-details, websites, banners, videos, and so on. And we do this consistently, fully centralized across the globe for each and every market. And what we added when I was here last year, Creative Factory was brand new. Now we are 1 year and a little bit into the journey, and I can report back on some of the learnings here. So the Creative Factory is focusing on what we call simple creatives. Then we have a couple of teams that are operating across our organization. One very critical piece is what we call the global service layer. These are a couple of corporate roles that we have co-located in all the important geographies worldwide. And this team is really making sure that these global framework, these global approaches are working seamlessly in the markets, because there are always market nuances that you simply cannot ignore. So this team is making sure that this is fit for purpose. And then a team called Service Operations, which is really making sure that all the end-to-end delivery processes are up and running seamlessly, even cross-functionally. So we are managing on behalf of the business the entire interface to IT and other functions that are required. Couple of things that the Global Content Factory can support. Of course, reusage of assets, localizing of assets, then following global brand guidelines and frameworks, keeping consistency. The third bullet, very important, which is simply not possible, in my opinion, in a more decentralized approach, maintaining asset integrity, meaning having the metadata in place, having the tagging in place, and making sure that all this metadata flows from global to regions into markets. In a decentralized approach, you will lose control on the regional level latest, let alone on the market level, and then you will not be able to follow the entire content journey end to end. And then, of course, we can enable content delivery at the right time through the right channels. One term that I coined last year, we all agree content is king, yeah? But without the delivery of the content, content is pretty much useless. So delivery is definitely Kong. So the new master in town is King Kong, which resonated well. I received quite some reactions on this last year. So, talking about the Creative Factory, which was brand new last year, not so new anymore this year, for me this was really the missing link in this entire content management journey. As I mentioned, Creative Factory really focusing on below the line or simple creative work. Basically, whatever is existing already, we take it, we refresh it, we localize it, we put it across channels, whatever is possible there, we can do it in a factory setup. And our analysis has shown that the total addressable of this is typically well beyond 50% of what you normally see in your creative agency spend. So this is not a minor opportunity, this is significant, yeah? Instead of spending all this money with the local creative agency, you can organize it through a factory setup and improve performance there drastically. However, delivering custom content at scale is not a plug and play. This is actually really hard work, and we started to realize as we tried to get there. And that's really my learning so far. I'm not saying that this is the only 3 aspects that we need to consider, but these are definitely 3 of the key aspects that we need to consider. And these are the 3 prerequisites, how I would call them. Number 1 is you need to enable this modular content thing at scale, not in a pilot and project setup. You need to move this into a business as usual setup. Otherwise, you will not be able to deliver custom content in a high cadence to your HCPs. The second point is, and that's a must-have, this content approval thing need to be fundamentally revisited. Yeah? The traditional way of approving your content is not working. It becomes a bottleneck, and it becomes a significant bottleneck, so you need to do something about it. And then you also need to move beyond this heavy manual process. There's a lot of manual processing involved in this end-to-end process of content management. So you need to leverage technology and you need to leverage Gen AI. And no worries, I will not talk a lot about Gen AI, but that's a technology that is going to help. And it will help in two things. Short term, I guess, you don't really need to challenge the entire content management process as you know it. You can use this technology to improve what you are doing currently, more or less same logic, same thing, but you do it just better and more consistently. This is the opportunity short term, but long term, this technology definitely has the opportunity to fundamentally change the rules of the game. So let me elaborate a little bit more on some of these topics. Nothing magic here. 2022 on the modular content journey, we started to prepare everything. We started to understand people, process, technology-wise, what is required to put this in place. 2023, so last year, was all about piloting. So we teamed up with the US and with some emerging market geographies. We did some integration between critical platforms and technology, and we learned our lessons, partially the hard way. And this year, it's all about scaling, so we are defining the global practices, the global workflow, so that everything is able to scale fast and to move into business as usual setup. And this is what we're expecting then for next year, to really move this into operating phase where we can support all the markets with this kind of modularized approach. A couple of learnings here. Again, nothing really surprising. You need to show the value. Why is this worth mentioning? Value means different things for different stakeholders in the same organization, right? Corporate has different interests in that game than regions, than markets, and you need to tell your value story to all of them to keep them engaged and get them on board. Of course, you need to build trust with the key stakeholders, and one key stakeholder community here is obviously the approvers of the content. They need to become comfortable with this new approach, and that's really critical, and it can be a little bit of a roadblock. You need to have this global to local pull-through, so the corporate TAs need to be with you. They need to want that. Otherwise, you will not be able to roll this out into your regions and into the markets. Of course, you need to continuously improve what you are doing. And then talking about value, what you will be able to show pretty quickly is that localization can happen quicker than before because you are preparing the modules that are fit for purpose in the different geographies. So this is front-loaded and it will be then faster in your go-to-market. The second thing, and this is really important, as I mentioned already, this approval bottleneck needs to be tackled, yeah, no matter what. And we realized that there's quite some homework to do before you can plug and play technology here. And two of the most critical homeworks that probably not everybody has in place is you need to have a globally centralized, managed and maintained claims library, which means it needs to be clear what is a claim. There needs to be a clear definition of this. You need to have a clear taxonomy in place. And hand in hand with this, the same applies to your references library, which also need to be globally managed and maintained. And the claims need to be tagged to the references and the other way around. If this is not in place, you will not be able to automate anything. Yeah? And this is quite some heavy lift to do this globally across the entire organization. And then as an internal shared services provider, we are also helping with this by putting some global services in place. Mostly two. We are implementing an MLR pre-review service in place, which is doing some sanity check offshore so that the input that the approvers get are of better quality, so you save some iterations, you save some time, you make it easier for the approvers to get to the approval point. And then we are supporting with the anchoring and linking between the digital assets and the claims and the references. Yeah? So this eases the pain a little bit. And only then, if you have this in place and it's up and running globally, only then you can and should think about automation. Otherwise, you will be faced with this GIGO principle, garbage in, garbage out. It will not work. I'm not elaborating too much here on this, but Gen AI is a technology that will help along the end-to-end content management process in multiple ways. Why am I saying that showing this here in such a detailed way? The key message here is, together with our partners, Indigene in this case, we looked into each and every step of the entire content value chain, and we figured out we are talking about, give or take, 22 steps. And we start now very systematically to explore the opportunities for improvement along this entire chain. And why is this important to have such a framework in place? You need to optimize having the end-to-end process in mind. Otherwise, you end up with optimized silos that potentially don't fit your end-to-end process. So you always need to have the entire flow of the data, of the assets, and so on in mind, so that you don't create optimized silos that might corrupt your total experience here. Last but not least, 3 key things where I think it will change the rules of the game. One is content production, and I would not even say that it's only streamlined. I believe content production, the way we know it, which needs this kind of large-scale operation that we have established in India and so on, is a topic of the past. It will not be required anymore. Yeah? The content will come with the required code automatically, more or less, and you just need to make sure that it works. But there's no heavy lift required anymore in actually doing the coding. Then, of course, content velocity will be massively amplified. You might remember when I spoke last year, I talked about an initiative in Boehringer called Brands for Life, where we took an established portfolio and we have created a set of refreshed assets that motivated the field force again, that had a better touch and feel than these years-old assets and so on. And the ROI of this activity was really impressive on the back of a very mature, very established portfolio. So that was more than worth the investment. And now imagine a world where you can do this more or less on a quarterly basis, yeah, because it's easy to create fresh and new content because the data is all there and the machine can take it and can run its thing and come up with refreshed assets and visuals and whatever you need. Yeah? So this will fundamentally change the way we are thinking about this. And of course, as you are measuring more and if you are learning more about your customer preferences, the machine is getting smarter, the experience will become more personalized over time, obviously. Let me close with a couple of takeaways here. Just as a reminder, the 3 prerequisites from my perspective, and I'm very happy to discuss, yeah? Modular content at scale, not in a pilot setup, not in a project setup. It needs to be business as usual. Then the content approval thing that needs to be optimized. And then leveraging technology to optimize the way we are thinking about this currently. But what I also believe, and this is a little bit cannibalizing myself here, yeah? The global digital content factory, due to AI augmentation, will look very, very different rather sooner than later. I'm convinced about that. I even believe that modular content might become completely obsolete because the machine can create personalized content straight away without using help of any modules or templates or what have you. And then, an organization like mine typically is large scale, many people working in such an organization. I believe we will move into a space of talking about smart scale operations because we need to leverage technology much more. We take out all this manual labor, otherwise we will not be able to scale custom content here. What I want to also say is the real value will not be like in the past to have this large-scale operation that is able to support all the markets, but that you have your people, your process, your technology in place that is representing this global environment that is helping your corporate teams with all these glocal initiatives, how I call them, yeah? Glocal initiatives from global to regions to markets. That will be the true value. It will not be the big factory machine. It will be the network and the relationships that you have built that is enabling you to pull through from global into markets. And that will be the true value. And there will be no shortcut to this. This environment needs to be built, and it's a years-long process. But once you have that, no matter what comes our way, you will be able to play around with it, and then you implement an agile experimentation approach here, and then you learn in an accelerated way because you have built this beautiful environment. And then we don't know yet what will be beyond AI, but there will be something. You can still embrace it, you can experiment quickly, you can learn a lot, and then you just scale up what works, and what doesn't work, you forget. And that's really what I wanted to share with you. It's exactly 20 minutes, as always. No time for questions unless the chef is allowing for some questions. I don't know. Where's the chef? Any questions?
Thank you for the interesting session. And I would like to know more about how do you and did you remove the bottleneck of MLR approval of modular content specifically? As you know, we are generating much more content than before. Thank you.
Well, I hope that I was transparent enough that we are heavily working on it. We are actually in the process of getting these prerequisites in place. Yeah? So this, we are working now with the corporate TAs to align on the claims library. My organization is helping, for example, with a team of librarians in Barcelona to support them with this task so that the corporate TAs don't need to do this in isolation because there will not be resource and capacity to do so. So there is help required. But all the definitions, the taxonomy, and so on. So all the content as such to do this needs to come from the content owners who are the corporate TAs in the first place. Yeah? So we are still in the process of putting everything in place so that in the end we will be able to automate. That's the reality. Any other questions? One more?
Thank you. Amazing progress. Congrats. Just a question. The internal stakeholders, communication specialists, strategists, what is their satisfaction rate of this new model? Because they were used to work with their agencies to create potentially a lot of content locally. Can you give a little bit feedback on that?
Well, obviously, we are doing regular customer satisfaction surveys, and there's a huge difference with the satisfaction from your offshore and outsourced operations in comparison to your captive center operations, in our case, India versus Barcelona. So the Barcelona satisfaction rates are outstanding. They are constantly between 8 and 9 on a scale of 10, yeah? So this is really exceptional. Typically, you struggle more with the outsourced offshore operation. That's normal. We are tracking between 7.3 and 7.8, which is not bad, but not what you want. But maybe to your point, taking away all this creative work now, which we all agree is simple creative and probably doesn't need to sit with the local creative agency, that's a massive change management task indeed. And we are just in the journey to implement this more consistently and globally. So we have a lot of room for scaling this further. And this is actually the task at hand, and it will keep us busy for another 1 or 2 years before we are really operating this at scale. So, with this, thank you.